on how governments finance their deficits. So you know when a government spends way more cash than it actually pulls in from taxes, right? Well, that creates a deficit. And to fix it, they can either hike up taxes, slash their spending, or, and this is definitely the easiest route, they can just borrow the money. First, let's talk about who they actually borrow all this money from and, how they pull it off. They basically borrow from banks, big institutions, and even everyday folks like us by issuing what's called government bonds, which are honestly just fancy legal loan contracts. Second, let's break down exactly how these bonds work in the real world. Think of it like this. The government takes your cash today and promises to pay you back later with interest. To put the math simply, if you buy a 4-year bond with a face value of 100 and a 5% interest rate, you're going to get 5 back every single year, plus your original 100 when it finally reaches maturity. Finally, what's the ultimate result of this whole transaction? Well, the government gets the immediate funding they desperately need to run things, investors like you and me get a nice predictable cash flow, and that original deficit officially turns into public debt. Deficits lead to bonds, bonds lead to debt, and that public debt ultimately shapes our entire macroeconomic system. Ever wonder why governments can't just print a ton of cash to make us all rich? Well, when an economy is already at full employment, firing up the printing press doesn't create wealth, it just slaps a massive, hidden tax on your savings. First, let's break down the mechanics. Imagine an economy that's totally maxed out, right? Every worker has a job, and every factory is humming. If you dump more cash into that system, you literally can't get more products because there's no spare room to make them. The actual amount of stuff stays the same, and only the price tag goes up. Second, we've got to look at the political motive. If it just causes inflation, why do governments do it? Well, it's a silent way to pay bills without doing what voters absolutely hate, like raising taxes. That's why having an independent central bank is absolutely crucial. You need someone to say no so it doesn't become a personal ATM for politicians. Finally, let's talk about the consequences, or the inflation tax. It's brutal because it hits savers and lower-income folks the hardest, and nobody ever voted for it. Just look at Argentina, where inflation hit a crazy 211% in 2023, or the sheer economic chaos in Venezuela and Turkey. To sum it up, money is totally neutral in the long run. Printing cash without making more things doesn't bring prosperity, it just fuels inflation. I'll leave you with this spot-on quote from Nobel Prize winner Milton Friedman. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon.
So we're looking at the raw arithmetic behind the $39 trillion national debt to figure out if the American economy can actually, grow its way out of it. First, the immediate cost of this debt is eating up a massive portion of federal income, right around $5 trillion, and our interest payments now topping $1 trillion. Basically, 20% of all revenue goes solely to servicing past borrowing. Second, the real core problem here is that the debt is growing way faster than the economy itself. While governments usually manage debt by kind of growing around it rather than paying it off like a normal household would, the U.S. is currently adding $1 trillion in new debt every 100 days, while our GDP only grows by $600 billion in that exact same time frame. Finally, this creates a compounding $400 billion gap every single 100 days. If economic growth slows down, or if interest rates stay high, the debt isn't just sitting there in the background. It's actively outrunning the economy's ability to actually sustain it.
do governments actually pay for things when they spend more than they bring in? We're looking at the three core ways they can finance a budget deficit.
That's exactly it. And for you listening, this is so important because these are really the only choices a government has.
The only three.
Yeah. And they each come with, let's say, a very different kind of cost, whether that's political, financial, or monetary.
All right, so let's start with the two that most people are probably familiar with.
The obvious ones.
First up is, of course, taxes. I mean, that's the most straightforward way, right? You just take existing wealth.
It's the most direct, for sure.
Fair.
But as we all know, it often comes with the highest immediate political friction.
A lot of friction, yeah, which naturally leads to the second source, bonds.
Right. Issuing debt. This lowers that immediate political headache.
And the sources define this really clearly. It's, and I'm quoting here, taking loans to finance government activity and repaying the loans in the future.
Exactly. So you're not extracting wealth that exists today. You're borrowing from the future.
Okay, so if raising taxes is just too politically painful, and if the market for your bonds is drying up or the cost of debt is too high, that's where it gets really, really interesting. What happens when a government avoids both of those options?
That is the crucial pivot. Because if a government, as the source says, neither imposes taxes nor issues bonds, it's cornered.
It's cornered.
It has to finance its deficit through the only other mechanism it has, the creation and issuance of money.
And what's fascinating is that this specific situation has a name. It's not just printing money. We're talking about seigniorage.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that definition is key. Seigniorage is when a government finances its spending, not through taxes, not through bonds, but solely, and I'm stressing solely, through the issuance and printing of money.
So it's sort of the path of least resistance, in a way.
You could see it like that. There's no immediate political battle to raise revenue.
And no market you have to convince to loan you money.
Exactly. It's an immediate injection of funds right into the Treasury.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see that these aren't just definitions from a textbook.
Not at all. They are trade-offs. You're always choosing.
It's either visible pain now,
with taxes,
or a promise of pain later.
With bonds.
Or with seigniorage, it's a kind of invisible dilution of value that spreads across the entire economy.
That's a perfect way to put it. And understanding those three levers is, well, it's crucial to understanding the basic financial choices any government makes.
So what does this all mean for you? The sources point out that in our complex modern economy, the line between, say, central bank policy and pure seigniorage, that line can get very blurry.
Very blurry.
And it leaves you with a really important question to think about. Is that pure deficit funding version of seigniorage even possible anymore? Or is all modern money issuance, in a way, just another form of disguised debt? Something for you to chew on as you consider the real cost of creating money from nothing.